When the past shapes the present, love requires excavation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez approached relationship therapy with the methodical precision of an archaeologist, understanding that the surface tensions couples presented masked deeper layers of accumulated emotional sediment. Her therapeutic practice in downtown Seattle had earned recognition not for conventional counseling techniques, but for her innovative approach of systematically excavating the buried experiences that shaped current relationship dynamics. Elena's methodology emerged from her recognition that couples often struggled with conflicts that seemed disproportionate to their immediate circumstances. A disagreement about household chores would escalate into arguments about respect and appreciation. Discussions about finances would transform into battles over control and security. These surface-level disputes served as archaeological indicators, pointing toward deeper emotional strata that required careful examination. The foundation of Elena's approach rested on family systems theory and attachment research, combined with trauma-informed therapeutic practices. She understood that individuals brought entire emotional histories into their relationships, creating invisible templates that influenced their responses to intimacy, conflict, and vulnerability. These templates operated below conscious awareness, shaping behavior patterns that couples experienced as inexplicable or irrational. Elena's office reflected her archaeological metaphor, with carefully arranged artifacts from various cultures displayed alongside contemporary psychological texts. The physical environment reinforced her core message that understanding current relationships required respectful exploration of their historical foundations. She explained to couples that their emotional patterns had developed for important reasons, serving protective functions that deserved acknowledgement even when those patterns no longer served their relationship. The first couple to experience Elena's complete archaeological process was David and Sarah Mitchell, married for 8 years and struggling with what they described as constant miscommunication. David, a software engineer, approached problems with logical analysis and systematic solutions. Sarah, a high school counselor, prioritized emotional processing and collaborative discussion. Their differences had initially attracted them to each other but had gradually become sources of frustration and distance. Elena began their therapeutic excavation by mapping the emotional landscape each partner had inherited from their families of origin. She used genogram construction, a visual representation of family relationships that revealed patterns across generations. David's genogram showed a family system that valued emotional restraint, practical problem-solving, and individual achievement. 3 generations of men in his family had pursued technical careers, demonstrating love through providing and fixing rather than verbal expression or emotional availability. Sarah's family system emphasized emotional expression, collective decision-making, and relationship maintenance. Her parents had divorced when she was 12, leading to her assumption of emotional caretaking responsibilities for her younger siblings. The genogram revealed that women in Sarah's family often became relationship managers, sacrificing their own needs to maintain family harmony and prevent abandonment. The archaeological excavation continued as Elena guided David and Sarah through exploration of their earliest attachment experiences. David's parents had divorced when he was 5, followed by his father's remarriage to a woman who struggled with David's emotional needs. He learned early that expressing vulnerability resulted in impatience or dismissal, leading him to develop self-reliance as his primary coping strategy. Adult David brought this template into his marriage, interpreting Sarah's requests for emotional connection as criticism of his adequacy as a provider and partner. Sarah's attachment history revealed different but equally significant patterns. Her parents' marriage had been characterized by intense emotional volatility, with periods of passionate connection alternating with destructive conflict. When her parents divorced, Sarah concluded that her inadequate emotional caretaking had caused the family breakdown. Adult Sarah brought hypervigilance about relationship stability into her marriage, interpreting David's emotional reserve as evidence of impending abandonment. Elena's excavation process revealed how David and Sarah's inherited emotional patterns created a destructive cycle in their marriage. David's withdrawal in response to conflict triggered Sarah's abandonment fears, leading her to increase her pursuit of emotional connection. Sarah's increased emotional intensity triggered David's learned association between emotional expression and relationship instability, causing him to withdraw further. Neither partner understood the historical origins of their responses, leading them to attribute their cycle to personal inadequacy or incompatibility. The therapeutic breakthrough occurred when Elena introduced the concept of emotional artifacts, specific experiences, beliefs, and coping strategies that individuals carried from their past into their present relationships. She explained that these artifacts had served important protective functions during their formation but might require modification to support adult intimacy. The goal was not to discard their emotional history but to develop conscious choice about which artifacts to preserve and which to transform. Elena guided David through examination of his emotional artifacts related to vulnerability and emotional expression. His artifact collection included the belief that emotional needs were burdens, the strategy of demonstrating love through actions rather than words, and the assumption that relationship conflict indicated fundamental incompatibility. These artifacts had protected him during childhood but limited his capacity for intimate connection as an adult. Sarah's emotional artifact exploration revealed different but equally significant patterns. Her collection included the belief that relationship stability required constant vigilance, the strategy of managing others' emotions to prevent abandonment, and the assumption that her emotional needs caused relationship problems. These artifacts had helped her survive family instability but created anxiety and emotional exhaustion in her marriage. The excavation process required careful attention to the protective functions each artifact had served. Elena emphasized that these patterns had developed as intelligent responses to challenging circumstances, deserving respect rather than criticism. This approach prevented the shame and defensiveness that often emerged when individuals felt their coping strategies were pathologized or dismissed. Elena introduced couples to the concept of artifact curation, the process of consciously choosing which emotional patterns to maintain and which to modify. This metaphor empowered couples to become active participants in their emotional development rather than passive recipients of their historical conditioning. The curation process required developing awareness of their automatic responses, understanding the origins of those responses, and experimenting with alternative approaches to intimacy and conflict. David's artifact curation process focused on expanding his emotional vocabulary and developing comfort with vulnerability in safe relational contexts. Elena taught him to distinguish between childhood experiences where emotional expression had been unsafe and his current relationship where emotional expression could strengthen connection. This process required patience and practice as David learned to override decades of conditioning about emotional reserve. Sarah's curation process involved developing tolerance for relationship uncertainty and learning to distinguish between realistic relationship concerns and anxiety rooted in childhood experiences. Elena helped Sarah recognize that her hypervigilance about relationship stability often created the very problem she feared, as her anxiety-driven behaviors could feel overwhelming to partners who needed emotional space for processing. The archaeological metaphor proved particularly valuable for addressing trauma-related relationship patterns. Elena worked with couples where one or both partners had experienced significant childhood trauma, understanding that these experiences created particularly complex emotional artifacts. Trauma-informed archaeological work required specialized attention to safety, pacing, and the integration of traumatic experiences into coherent personal narratives. One such case involved Michael Chen and Elena Rodriguez, a couple struggling with intimacy and trust issues stemming from Michael's childhood sexual abuse. The archaeological excavation revealed how Michael's survival strategies during trauma had become barriers to adult intimacy. His emotional artifacts included hypervigilance about physical safety, difficulty trusting his own perceptions, and strategies for emotional numbing during stressful situations. Elena's work with Michael required integration of trauma-specific therapeutic techniques with her archaeological approach. She helped Michael understand that his protective responses had enabled survival during childhood but might benefit from modification to support adult relationship satisfaction. The process required careful attention to Michael's sense of control and agency, ensuring that he felt empowered to choose the pace and depth of excavation work. Lisa's role in the archaeological process involved developing understanding of how trauma impacts relationship dynamics and learning supportive responses that honored Michael's healing process. Elena taught Lisa about secondary trauma effects, helping her recognize that her own emotional responses to Michael's trauma history were normal and manageable. The couple's work focused on creating safety and predictability in their relationship while maintaining space for individual healing processes. Elena's archaeological approach extended beyond individual emotional histories to include cultural and intergenerational influences on relationship patterns. She recognized that couples brought not only personal experiences but also cultural messages about gender roles, emotional expression, conflict resolution, and relationship expectations. The excavation process required attention to how cultural artifacts influenced individual relationship behavior. Cultural archaeological work proved particularly important for intercultural couples who navigated different cultural expectations about relationships, family involvement, and individual autonomy. Elena helped these couples identify which cultural artifacts supported their relationship goals and which created unnecessary conflict or confusion. The process required respectful examination of cultural differences without privileging one cultural approach over another. Elena's practice evolved to include group archaeological work, where multiple couples participated in structured excavation processes together. Group work provided opportunities for couples to recognize universal themes in their emotional histories while learning from others' curation processes. The group format normalized the experience of carrying emotional artifacts from past experiences and reduced isolation that couples often felt when examining relationship patterns. The group archaeological process revealed common themes across different couples' emotional histories. Many individuals carried artifacts related to childhood experiences of feeling unseen or unheard, leading to adult relationship patterns focused on seeking validation or avoiding vulnerability. Others carried artifacts related to family systems that struggled with emotional regulation, creating adult patterns of either emotional dysregulation or excessive control. Elena documented her archaeological approach in professional publications that contributed to the development of trauma-informed couples therapy practices. Her work demonstrated that relationship problems often reflected intelligent adaptations to historical circumstances rather than character defects or fundamental incompatibilities. This perspective reduced blame and increased hope while providing concrete strategies for relationship improvement. The effectiveness of Elena's approach became evident through long-term follow-up studies with couples who completed archaeological work. These couples showed sustained improvements in relationship satisfaction, communication effectiveness, and conflict resolution skills. More significantly, they reported increased self-awareness and personal agency in their relationships, feeling empowered to make conscious choices about their emotional responses rather than feeling controlled by automatic patterns. Elena's archaeological metaphor influenced broader therapeutic practices beyond couples' work. Individual therapists began incorporating archaeological concepts into personal therapy, helping clients understand how their past experiences influenced current life patterns. Family therapists used archaeological approaches to help families understand intergenerational patterns and develop conscious choice about which family traditions to maintain and which to modify. The theoretical foundation for Elena's work continued expanding as researchers validated the importance of addressing historical influences on current relationship functioning. Studies in neuroscience confirmed that early attachment experiences created lasting neural pathways that influenced adult relationship behavior. Research in epigenetics suggested that traumatic experiences could influence genetic expression across generations, providing biological validation for intergenerational transmission of emotional patterns. Elena's practice demonstrated that successful relationship therapy required more than communication skill development or conflict resolution training. Sustainable relationship change required excavation and conscious curation of the emotional artifacts that each partner brought into their relationship. This archaeological process honored the protective functions of historical patterns while creating space for new relationship experiences. The couples who completed Elena's archaeological process developed what she termed conscious relationship skills, the ability to recognize when historical patterns influenced current responses and make deliberate choices about their behavior. These skills enabled couples to interrupt destructive cycles before they escalated and create new patterns based on their current relationship goals rather than their historical conditioning. Elena's work illustrated that emotional archaeology was not merely therapeutic technique but fundamental life skill. Individuals who understood the origins of their emotional patterns could make informed decisions about personal development, relationship choices, and parenting practices. They could break intergenerational cycles of dysfunction while preserving valuable cultural and family traditions. The archaeological metaphor proved particularly powerful because it honored the value of personal history while creating possibility for conscious change. Unlike approaches that focused on eliminating problematic patterns, archaeology emphasized respectful excavation, careful examination, and thoughtful curation. This approach reduced resistance to change while maintaining connection to important aspects of personal identity and family heritage. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's innovative approach to relationship therapy demonstrated that understanding the past was essential for creating satisfying present relationships. Her archaeological methodology provided couples with tools for excavating their emotional histories, understanding the protective functions of their patterns, and consciously curating their responses to intimacy and conflict. The practice of emotional archaeology offered hope to couples who felt trapped by repetitive relationship problems, showing them that change was possible through understanding rather than simply willpower. Elena's work proved that love required not only commitment and communication but also the courage to excavate the buried experiences that shaped the capacity for intimate connection. Through careful attention to the emotional artifacts each partner brought to their relationship, couples could transform their understanding of conflict from evidence of incompatibility to opportunities for deeper connection and mutual healing. Elena's archaeological approach demonstrated that the most satisfying relationships emerged when partners became conscious curators of their shared emotional landscape, honoring their individual histories while creating new traditions together.